show you how to do a carburetor clean on a 1997 Yamaha VMAX 700 SX, SX700. And basically the carburetors are right about here. The first thing you have to do is to remove this. So I'm going to kind of push this. This is like the air filter cover. Push this, remove the tab, and just pull it off. So that's the first thing you have to do, and you have to remove the air box. To remove the air box, you got to remove the spark plug cables right here. So you see here, the spark plug igniter coils are right here, going to the spark plugs. You need to remove this and detach it off the box. Make sure you retain the screws. What I do is I put the screws right back in here after I take them off. Now I'm going to remove these screws. Put this back right in. You don't want to lose these screws. I try to put them back wherever I can. So if you look over here, you'll see that these spark plug cables are routed with a couple of other cables coming from the control. There's, I believe, the accelerator cable going to the carburetors. There's another cable, I think it's for the oil injection circuit, coming from the dash on the Snowmobile. So they're all kind of put together, but to remove the air box, you just need to move these aside. I'm going to take some pictures of these wires before I disconnect them. Look here, there are wires connected to the spark plugs that are connected to other wires. You need to draw a diagram, which I do have, of how these wires connect to each other. Make sure you have diagrams, or make sure you can follow the schematic, electrical schematic, as to how they connect back together. So for the air box, there's one screw here, there's one screw here, there's a couple of screws all around. So we're going to start by taking these screws out. So what the air housing does is it has little passageways on the inside, which I'll show you. They don't have an air filter inside the air box, but they do have little passageways that break the flow of the air. So if there are dirt particles coming in with the airflow into here, it kind of traps it in one of those little compartments. There's a filter that's on top of this, but the filter does the primary job, and then the rest of the air box does the remaining job of filtering out the impurities that may get into the engine and the carburetors. So you can see from the vantage point that I'm looking at, there's a screw here, there's a screw here, and then there's a screw over here. The next thing we have to do is to remove these two bolts on the back. I'm going to remove these on the back of the air filter. Size 10 metric wrench to do that. The next thing you would have to do is to actually pull this back. This is the hose that comes from the fuel tank. Look at these two cables, okay? There's one for the oil injection, and there's one for the carburetor, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to take a picture of it in this position. The reason I want to do that is because you want to put it in the same way that you pulled it out. So this is the top of the air box. So you see these baffles here? This is what kind of deflects. There's a lot of dirt on this. So when the air comes in through here, it kind of gets trapped on the deflectors. This actually pulls out. You can even pull this out. So the next part is a little more tricky, getting this air box housing out. You're going to have to loosen the boots here for the carburetor connections. You're going to have to loosen every single one of them. So on the right side of the Snowmobile air housing, there's an electrical box you need to remove and a harness you need to loosen up. I bought the biggest Phillips screwdriver I could find, and it's the best for these type of jobs. Now it's time you loosen up the screws for the clamps on the carburetors. It's time to try and take this out, but this is where it takes a little bit of effort. So I got the airbox removed, and I'm going to kind of explain a few things about the Snowmobile. The engine actually drives this transmission, which is connected to a belt, which then drives this transmission. This belt and transmission is connected to this shaft, which goes to the other side. It's connected to another pulley that actually is connected to the track, which runs the track. That's how the Snowmobile operates. This little gadget in here is the fuel pump and the oil pump to bring the oil into the engine and the fuel into the carburetors. You can see all these lines going back and forth. This is the oil line. The rest of them, I think there are 2 oil lines, and the rest of them are fuel lines, which are in green, and they're connected to the carburetor. So there are a couple of clamps connecting it to the engine. We're going to have to loosen that up. So the next thing you have to do is to disconnect these fuel lines coming from the fuel pump. This one, and this one here. But before you do that, you want to make sure there's fuel in this line. You need to make sure you have a container to catch it, because if you pull it out right now, you're going to have some fuel spill right in there, and I want to avoid that. So I'm going to see if I can catch that in some small container, at least to catch the gas that's coming out of the tubes. Now this is the next item we have to tackle, the throttle cable going to the carburetor. I'm just going to loosen it up here. Just want to make sure there's nothing else in the way of this. So this is okay. It looks like this needs to be disconnected. There are little clips here that you need to bring down, and once you do that, you can loosen these up. Yep, it came off. I'm going to do the same thing for these. Now we're ready to pull the carburetor out. So these are the 2 cables that need to be disconnected. The yellow and black connects up to a yellow and black over here, and then the black side of the cable connects to a brown on this harness. And when you pull the carburetor out, make sure you hold it steady, because you don't want to spill the gas. There's gas in the bowls. But the first thing I'm going to do is wipe it clean. Every one of these entry points to the engine needs to be cleaned, and then you need to seal it with plastic. I think I'm going to use some old gloves